Hello there and welcome back to the Sleep Science. You are standing at the edge of evening, the room dimming almost without your permission, shadows stretching like they've been practicing all day just for this moment. Outside, the world is winding down, but inside your skull, something far more elaborate is quietly gearing up. You probably won't survive this, by which I mean you almost certainly won't stay awake through the full journey of what your brain is about to do. And honestly, that's kind of the point. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. Somewhere out there, another half-awake human is doing the same thing you are right now. Now dim the lights, or maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You ease yourself down, and as your body finds stillness, your brain does not. It never does. Instead, it pivots. Daytime consciousness, your alert, caffeinated, mildly anxious supervisor, starts packing up its desk. In its place, the night shift clocks in. Neurons that spent all day reacting to emails, traffic lights, and the emotional tone of a single unread message now begin to change how they talk to one another. This is not rest. This is reorganization. For most of human history, people had no idea this was happening. Aristotle famously believed the brain's main job was to cool the blood, a charming theory that did not age well. The mainstream historical fact is that it wasn't until the 20th century, with the invention of electroencephalography, that scientists could actually watch brainwaves change during sleep. Suddenly, the night was no longer a black box. It was a rhythm, slow waves, fast bursts, patterns repeating like tides. Your brain, it turns out, is a creature of habit even when you're unconscious. As you lie there, your senses begin handing over control. Vision is the first to go, which is convenient because staring at the inside of your eyelids doesn't offer much stimulation. Hearing lingers, though, which is why you can still register the hum of the fan or a distant car passing by. This handoff is not accidental. Deep in your brain, systems evolved over hundreds of thousands of years are making judgment calls about what's worth waking you for. A lion outside the cave? Yes. Your neighbor's late-night microwave? Probably not. Here's a quirky tidbit to tuck under your pillow. Some early sleep researchers believe dreams leaked out through the eyes at night, which is why people sometimes wake with crust in the corners. It's delightfully wrong, but also very on brand for humans trying to make sense of something invisible. Even now, with all our scanners and models, parts of sleep remain stubbornly mysterious. You start to feel that familiar heaviness, the gentle dragging sensation behind your eyes. This is not just feeling tired. This is your brain changing its electrical language. Neurons that were firing in rapid, complex patterns begin to synchronize, like a crowd slowly clapping in unison. Historians still argue whether early humans recognized sleep as a vulnerable state or a sacred one first, but your brain treats it as both. Vulnerable enough to require protection, sacred enough to defend fiercely, and defend it, it does. If you've ever tried to stay awake past your limit, you know the brain gets petty. It will flood you with micro sleeps, brief lapses where consciousness just blinks. One moment you're alert, the next you've missed a sentence, a thought, or an entire exit on the highway. This is your brain insisting, like a tired parent, that bedtime is not a suggestion. Joke number one, softly delivered. Your brain does not negotiate, it unions. As night deepens, chemicals shift. Wake-promoting signals like norepinephrine begin to fade, while others quietly rise. This chemical choreography has been conserved across mammals, which means that somewhere right now, a raccoon is also getting sleepy in a way that is neurologically relatable. There's something comforting about that. You are not failing at productivity. You are participating in biology. Yet scientists are worried, and not without reason. Modern life has introduced conditions your brain did not evolve for. Artificial light at midnight, endless novelty in the palm of your hand, the psychological equivalent of being gently shaken every few seconds. Your brain still tries to initiate its night routine, but it's doing so under protest. Imagine trying to clean your house while someone keeps turning the lights on and off. and asking if you've seen this meme. That's your prefrontal cortex at 1:17 a.m. There's a long-standing scholarly debate tucked right into this moment. Historians still argue whether sleep's primary evolutionary purpose was energy conservation or neural maintenance. And the truth may be an inconvenient blend of both. As you drift, your brain is already reallocating resources, diverting energy away from outward awareness and toward inward repair. This is where the worry creeps in. What happens when this process is shortened, fragmented, or skipped entirely? You feel your thoughts begin to lose their sharp edges. Ideas slide instead of snapping. This is the early dissolving of executive control, the part of you that insists on making lists and replaying conversations from 3 years ago. It's also why the most ridiculous thoughts can feel profound at this hour. Joke number 2. At night, your brain will confidently pitch you ideas it would absolutely reject in the morning. Still, this surrender is necessary. Across cultures, sleep has been treated with ritual and respect. Ancient Romans had designated quiet hours. Medieval towns rang bells to mark curfew. Even without neuroscience, people sensed that the night demanded different rules. You are stepping into that same ancient agreement now, one negotiated between neurons long before you were born. As the room grows quieter, your awareness narrows. The edges of your body blur. Your brain is preparing to seal the gates, not to shut the world out forever, but to protect what comes next. Joke number 3, barely audible. Think of it as putting your phone on airplane mode, except the plane is your consciousness and it's about to disappear. You are not gone yet. You are hovering at the threshold where scientists peer in with concern and curiosity, instruments humming, questions unanswered. What happens to your brain at night is not simple rest. It is an active, risky, essential transformation. And as you let yourself slip further, your brain does what it has always done best. Carry you into the dark, hoping you'll let it finish the job. You drift a little deeper now, past the threshold where thoughts still pretend to behave. The descent into sleep is not a drop. It's a long, spiraling staircase, and your brain insists on touching every step. Awareness loosens its grip first, not vanishes, just softens, like a hand unclenching after holding something too tightly all day. You're still here, technically, but the version of you that cares is already packing light. Your brain waves begin to slow, and this is one of those rare moments where scientists can say something with confidence. Using EEGs, they've watched this transition thousands of times. Fast, jagged beta waves of wakefulness giving way to smoother alpha rhythms, then slipping further into the rolling hills of theta. This mainstream historical fact changed everything when it was discovered in the early 1900s. Sleep was no longer a blank void. It had stages, textures, signatures. Night suddenly had a map. You feel it as that floating sensation, as if your body weighs less, but also more, simultaneously. Muscles start to relax in uneven patches. Your jaw drops just a little. Shoulders sink. Somewhere in your brainstem, ancient circuitry is recalibrating how much effort it takes to simply exist. Breathing deepens, not because you decide to breathe deeply, but because the brain quietly edits the script. This is where consciousness begins to misbehave. Thoughts fragment. Images appear without context. A staircase, a face, a place you're not sure you've ever been. This isn't dreaming yet, not properly. It's more like your brain warming up the projector, checking bulbs, flipping through slides at random. If you jerk awake suddenly, it's often because your motor system hasn't fully gotten the memo. That falling sensation? A hypnic jerk, a miscommunication between systems, like someone shouting, "We're asleep now," while another department hasn't read the email. Here's a quirky tidbit. In the late 19th century, some doctors believed these jerks were signs of moral weakness or overstimulation of the imagination. Too much novel reading, they warned, could make your soul twitch at night. Modern neuroscience disagrees, but it does agree on one thing. Your brain hates half measures. It wants either full wakefulness or full sleep. And this in-between state makes it grumpy. As you descend, sensory input gets filtered more aggressively. The thalamus, your brain's relay station, starts closing lanes. Information from the outside world still arrives, but it's delayed, dulled, deprioritized. This is why someone can say your name softly and you'll wake, but a steady noise fades into nothing. Your brain is not shutting down, it's curating. Historians still argue whether this sensory gating evolved primarily for predator detection or for preserving sleep depth, but either way, it's doing you a quiet favor. Time starts to behave strangely here. Seconds stretch, minutes compress. You might feel like you've been drifting for ages when it's only been a handful of breaths. On this temporal distortion happens because the brain regions responsible for timekeeping, especially in the prefrontal cortex, are easing offline. Without them, there's no reliable narrator to say, this is taking too long. Joke number one for this stretch. Insomnia feels eternal because your brain has lost the clock, not because the universe is punishing you personally. Emotion also begins to flatten, but not evenly. Worries lose their sharp edges, but they don't disappear. They smear. This is why anxious thoughts can feel oddly abstract at night, less about specific problems and more about a vague sense of unease. Your brain is transitioning control from logical analysis to more associative, emotional networks. It's like switching from spreadsheets to mood boards. Across mammalian species, this descent looks remarkably similar. Cats, dogs, humans, we all pass through comparable stages with slight variations in timing. That universality is one reason scientists worry when sleep is disrupted. If evolution has conserved something this carefully, it's probably important. Skipping it isn't rebellious, it's risky. And yet modern life treats this phase like an inconvenience. You scroll, you check one more thing, you negotiate with yourself. Your brain, meanwhile, is trying to downshift while being poked every few seconds by novelty and light. Blue wavelengths tell it the sun is still up. Notifications tell it you might be needed. The descent becomes steeper, less graceful. Think of it like trying to land a plane while someone keeps flicking the runway lights on and off. Joke number two, your brain is a very patient pilot, but even it has limits. There's an ongoing scholarly debate nested right here. Historians still argue whether the earliest humans slept in one long block or in segmented phases with a wakeful period in the middle of the night. Some evidence suggests people once expected to wake briefly, reflect, pray, or talk quietly before returning to sleep. If that's true, your occasional 3 a.m. awakening might not be a failure, but your modern panic about it definitely is. As the descent continues, your sense of self begins to thin. Not dissolve, just stretch out, less dense. You might lose track of where your hands are, or whether you're facing left or right. This disembodiment is subtle but profound. The brain areas that maintain your body map are recalibrating, preparing for a state where movement will soon be discouraged. And you are being gently untethered from your physical outline. Your inner voice softens too. Sentences trail off. Grammar gives up. This is not because you're becoming less intelligent. It's because language is expensive and your brain is about to redirect its budget. Joke number three whispered, even your thoughts are getting sleepy and deciding not to finish there. And then there's a moment, brief and easy to miss, where effort disappears. You're no longer trying to fall asleep. You're just falling. The descent has momentum now. Systems synchronize. Brain waves slow further, larger and more coordinated. Consciousness, that spotlight you're used to standing in, widens into a dim glow. Scientists watch this stage closely because it's fragile. Interruptions here can ripple forward, affecting everything that comes later in the night. Memory consolidation, emotional regulation, neural cleanup, all of it depends on a smooth descent. This is why they worry, not because sleep is mysterious, but because it's precise. And precision does not like chaos. You sink another step down the staircase. The world recedes. The night takes over. Your brain is no longer asking for permission. You're asleep now, but not unreachable. The world still exists, hovering just beyond a set of gates your brain is actively managing. This is where the gatekeepers step in. Deep inside your head, the thalamus takes on its nighttime role, deciding what, if anything, is allowed to pass from the outside world into your awareness. You don't feel this happening, but you live with the consequences every night. The thalamus is often described as a relay station, and that's not wrong, just incomplete. By day, it's busy forwarding sensory information, sights, sounds, touches, up to the cortex for interpretation. By night, its job description changes. It doesn't shut the doors entirely, it narrows them. Signals still arrive, but many are dampened, delayed, or rerouted. This selective filtering is a mainstream neurological fact confirmed through decades of sleep studies. Without it, sleep would be shallow, fragile, and constantly interrupted. You might notice this as the way some sounds disappear while others cut straight through. A steady fan becomes nothing, yet a sudden creak or your name spoken softly can pull you back toward wakefulness. Your brain is pattern matching for relevance and potential threat, even while you sleep. This ability kept your ancestors alive when the dark was full of teeth and uncertainty. It keeps you alive now, even if the biggest danger is just a smoke alarm with low batteries. Here's a quirky tidbit. In the 1950s, researchers discovered that sleeping subjects could sometimes incorporate external sounds into their dreams. A dripping faucet might become rain. A distant siren might morph into a wailing violin. Your brain doesn't just block information, it occasionally repurposes it. That's not a bug, it's creative problem solving on low power mode. As the thalamus tightens its grip, your cortex responds by synchronizing activity. Neurons fire together in slow rolling waves, especially in the frontal regions. These slow waves are one of the hallmarks of deeper sleep stages. They act like traffic lights, coordinating when groups of neurons can talk and when they must stay quiet. Historians still argue whether these oscillations evolved primarily to protect sleep from disruption or to enable internal processing, but either way, they are essential. Your sense of the outside world continues to fade. Touch becomes vague. Temperature awareness blurs. You might kick off a blanket without waking, guided by unconscious thermoregulation systems that never clock out. The brain, even asleep, is still running the body. It just does so without asking for your opinion. Emotionally, things grow quieter too, though not silent. The brain areas involved in emotional appraisal reduce their responsiveness to incoming stimuli. This is one reason why bad news at night can feel less sharp, or paradoxically, why you might sleep through things that would horrify you by day. Context matters, and context is being temporarily muted. There's a long-running scholarly debate nested in this gatekeeping process. Historians still argue whether sleep evolved first as a state of sensory withdrawal or as an active, internally focused mode of cognition. In other words, did your brain learn to ignore the world so it could sleep, or did it learn to sleep so it could work on itself? The answer matters, especially when scientists try to understand what goes wrong in disorders like insomnia, where the gates refuse to close fully. Your body responds to this gating by further relaxing. Heart rate slows, blood pressure dips. These changes are coordinated through communication between the thalamus, brainstem, and autonomic nervous system. It's a carefully choreographed shutdown, and when it works, you barely notice it. When it doesn't, you wake feeling like you never truly disconnected. Ancient cultures sense this boundary intuitively. Many believed the night thinned the veil between worlds, that sleep made people more vulnerable to spirits or divine messages. While modern neuroscience doesn't support supernatural gatecrashers, it does agree on one thing. Sleep alters how information is processed. You are, in a very real sense, less defended against internal signals, memories, emotions, imaginings, once the external gates are lowered. Joke number one slips in here. Your brain will ignore a blaring fan all night, but absolutely wake you up because one floorboard thought about creaking. Despite this protection, the gates are not perfect. If you're stressed, anxious, or sleeping in an unfamiliar place, the thalamus stays more alert. Now, this is known as the first night effect, where one hemisphere of the brain remains more vigilant. Dolphins take this to an extreme, sleeping with half their brain at a time. You don't do that, but on your first night in a hotel, your brain definitely considers it. That vigilance comes at a cost. When the gates don't fully close, deeper stages of sleep are harder to reach. Scientists worry about this because chronic partial gating, where the brain never fully commits to sleep, can impair memory, mood regulation, and immune function over time. Your brain needs uninterrupted stretches of disconnection to do its most important work. Joke number two. This is why your brain resents that one email notification at 2 a.m. with the passion of 1,000 suns. As the night progresses, the thalamus will loosen and tighten its filters in cycles, or tracking your movement through different sleep stages. It's not a one-time decision, it's ongoing management. Think of it as a bouncer who keeps checking the room, adjusting the guest list, making sure only the right kind of chaos is allowed inside. You remain mostly unaware of all this labor. From your perspective, there is just darkness, drifting, maybe the faintest echo of thought. But inside, your brain is negotiating with the world, saying no to almost everything so it can say yes to what comes next. Joke number 3, barely there. Even asleep, your brain is better at setting boundaries than you are when awake. The gates hold, the outside world dims further, and with the senses mostly quieted, the stage is set for something stranger, more fluid, and far less logical to begin stirring. With the gates mostly closed, your mind turns inward, and this is where things begin to get creative. Dreams don't arrive all at once, fully formed with plots and symbolism, neatly tied up like a film festival entry. They begin as flickers, fragments, a color without an object, a sensation without a cause. Logic is still around somewhere, but it's leaned back in its chair, pretending not to notice what's happening. Early dream imagery often surfaces during lighter stages of sleep, when your brain is experimenting with disconnection, but hasn't fully committed. You might see a face dissolve into a place, or hear a voice without words attached. This is not random chaos, it's your brain's associative networks warming up. Neurons that don't usually fire together during waking life begin to mingle. Boundaries soften, categories blur. A mainstream historical fact anchors this strange territory. In the 1950s, scientists first identified REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and linked it strongly to vivid dreaming. But what's less commonly appreciated is that dreamlike imagery can begin well before REM. The brain doesn't flip a switch from no dreams to full narrative epic. It eases in, testing the waters. You feel this as a gentle slipping away from linear thought. Cause and effect weaken. Time stops behaving. You might briefly think you're awake, only to realize that the room you're in isn't quite right. These moments are hypnagogic hallucinations, and they're surprisingly common. Floating, falling, hearing your name called. Your brain is rehearsing perception without external input, like a band sound checking in an empty venue. Well, here's a quirky tidbit. Thomas Edison famously napped with metal balls in his hands so that when he slipped into this early dream state and relaxed his grip, the noise would wake him. He believed the imagery here was uniquely creative. Modern neuroscience would agree. This boundary state is rich with novel connections, though it's terrible at fact-checking. Emotionally, these early dreams are often muted or oddly neutral. You might observe rather than participate. That's because the amygdala, your emotional amplifier, is only just beginning to change its activity. It hasn't fully turned up the volume yet. Historians still argue whether dreams originally evolved as emotional simulations or as byproducts of memory processing. But this gradual emotional ramp-up suggests intention rather than accident. Why your sense of self also becomes unstable. You may not feel like you in these images. Perspective shifts easily. First person, third person, no person at all. The brain regions that anchor identity are loosening their coordination. This is one reason dreams can feel revelatory or unsettling. The narrator you trust during the day is no longer in charge. Joke number 1 floats by. Your brain has officially entered a writer's room with no editor in a strict yes and policy. Sensory detail increases, but it's inconsistent. Visuals might be sharp while sound is muffled, or vice versa. Touch can feel exaggerated or absent. This unevenness reflects which sensory cortices are lighting up at the moment. Your brain is not trying to recreate reality. It's remixing it with whatever neural ingredients are closest to the surface. Ancient cultures took these early dream moments seriously. Many believed the first images of sleep carried messages from gods or ancestors, unfiltered by waking ego. While modern science doesn't support divine inboxes, it does show that the brain is less constrained here, more willing to explore unusual combinations. That openness is exactly what makes scientists uneasy when sleep is disrupted. Fragment these stages too often, and the brain loses a key sandbox for safe experimentation. There's an ongoing scholarly debate embedded right here. Historians still argue whether dreaming serves a specific evolutionary function or is an emergent property of other necessary processes, like memory consolidation. Are dreams the point or just the smoke from deeper neural machinery? Early dream imagery sits right at the heart of that question. And you drift deeper and the images begin to cohere. Scenes last longer. Characters linger. The brain's storytelling instinct kicks in, even without an audience. Patterns repeat, motifs emerge, and meaning starts being assigned retroactively. Your brain loves narrative so much it will invent one even when consciousness is mostly offline. Joke number 2. This is why your dream will confidently present you with a situation that makes absolutely no sense and dare you to question it. Physiologically, your eyes may start to move beneath closed lids, tracking imagined motion. This eye movement was once thought to mean you were watching your dreams like a movie. The reality is more complex, but the connection between internal imagery and physical response is real. Even asleep, your brain-body link is intact. As emotion deepens, the amygdala becomes more active, especially in later dream stages. But right now, it's a gentle swell rather than a storm. Dreams here are often strange but not terrifying, curious rather than urgent. Scientists see this as a kind of rehearsal space where the brain tests associations without full emotional stakes. Joke number 3, drifting lazily. It's like beta testing reality, except the bugs are the features. The outside world is now mostly gone. The gatekeepers are firm. The descent has reached a new layer, where imagination no longer asks permission, and memory starts quietly feeding the visuals. Your brain is warming up for much bigger productions ahead. And as the images grow richer and stranger, one of the night's most important jobs is about to begin: sorting, filing, and reshaping the past while you dream it into something new. As the imagery deepens and steadies, something practical slips quietly into motion. While you wander through half-formed scenes and soft-focus moments, your brain opens the back room, the memory sorting room. This is where yesterday gets handled, not with urgency but with intent. Experiences you thought were done with are picked up again, turned over, and evaluated for long-term storage. At the center of this process sits the hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure with an outsized role. During the day, it acts like a temporary clipboard, rapidly recording events, conversations, and spatial details. At night, especially during non-REM sleep, it starts replaying them. This is a mainstream or well-established scientific fact. Neurons in the hippocampus fire in patterns that closely resemble those seen during waking experiences, sometimes in compressed bursts, as if fast-forwarding through the day. You don't notice this replay directly. You feel it indirectly, through dreams that borrow pieces of reality, remixing them into something unfamiliar. A co-worker appears in your childhood home. A recent conversation echoes in a place that doesn't exist. This isn't symbolism trying to tell you something profound. It's your brain cross-referencing files, checking where new information fits among old memories. Here's a quirky tidbit to file away. In studies with rats navigating mazes, researchers observed hippocampal neurons replaying the maze paths during sleep, sometimes even running the sequence backward. It's as if the brain is reviewing footage from multiple angles, looking for patterns or efficiencies. You are doing the human version of that right now, minus the tail. As memories are replayed, the cortex listens. Over time, repeated reactivation helps transfer information from temporary hippocampal storage into more stable cortical networks. This process, memory consolidation, is one of sleep's most critical functions. Scientists worry when sleep is disrupted because without these uninterrupted replays, memories remain fragile, easily lost, or distorted. It's not just about remembering facts, it's about learning who you are in relation to what's happened. Emotion complicates this sorting. Memories tagged with strong feelings, especially fear, embarrassment, or joy, are more likely to be replayed, or the amygdala quietly flags them as important. This is why that awkward comment you made can resurface in a dream, while what you had for lunch vanishes without a trace. Your brain is prioritizing relevance over accuracy. There's an ongoing scholarly debate embedded in this process. Historians still argue whether sleep primarily strengthens memories or selectively weakens them, pruning away the unnecessary details. Some evidence suggests sleep helps you remember the gist while letting go of clutter. In other words, you may forget the exact words spoken, but retain the lesson. That's not a flaw, it's efficiency. You feel this as a gentle blurring. Details soften, edges smooth out, the day loses its sharpness. This is the brain deciding what not to carry forward. Joke number one slips in here. Your brain Marie Kondos your memories at night. Omar, and if it doesn't spark long-term usefulness, it quietly thanks it and moves on. Ancient thinkers noticed this effect long before neuroscience existed. The Romans believed sleep helped digest experience, much like food. The metaphor still works. During the day, you consume information constantly. At night, your brain breaks it down, extracts nutrients, and discards waste. Skip this step, and things get uncomfortable fast. Physiologically, this sorting is coordinated with slow brain waves that act like timing signals. These waves help align hippocampal replays with cortical readiness, ensuring information arrives when it can be properly integrated. It's a delicate dance. Interrupt it too often, and the choreography falls apart. This is one reason scientists are concerned about fragmented sleep. Each awakening doesn't just break rest. It cuts off a sentence mid-thought. Over time, this leads to memory gaps, reduced learning capacity, and that foggy sense that days are slipping through your fingers. You're not imagining it. Your brain needs long, uninterrupted stretches to finish its filing. Joke number two, waking up repeatedly at night is like yanking the power cord out of a computer that's in the middle of saving a very important document. Dreams during this stage often feel oddly familiar, stitched together from recognizable elements. You may revisit places you know well, though they're slightly off. Doors where windows should be, streets that bend the wrong way. This reflects the brain's attempt to integrate new memories into existing mental maps. The fit isn't always perfect, so reality gets renovated. Your sense of time continues to warp. Events from years apart sit side by side. This temporal flattening allows the brain to find connections that waking logic might miss. That's why insights sometimes emerge after sleep, even if you can't articulate how. Your brain has been quietly working through combinations you never consciously tried. Another quirky observation: people deprived of this kind of sleep show increased false memories. Without proper consolidation, the brain fills gaps with guesses. Confidence remains, accuracy does not. Scientists worry about this not just for exams or work, but for identity itself. Memory is the scaffolding of self. Undermine it, and everything feels less stable. There's a deeper debate here, too. Historians still argue whether the primary function of memory consolidation is personal survival or social cohesion. Remembering where food was matters, but so does remembering who wronged you or who helped you. Sleep shapes not just individual knowledge, but relationships. As the night rolls on, the sorting continues. Some memories are strengthened, others fade. A few are reshaped into stories you'll swear happened exactly that way. You remain blissfully unaware of these editorial decisions being made on your behalf. Joke number three, murmured softly. Your brain is editing your autobiography without consulting you, and honestly, it thinks it's doing you a favor. The imagery around you shifts again, growing less fragmented, more immersive. The memory work hums steadily in the background, nearly complete for this cycle. Soon another system will take center stage, one focused not on storing the past, but on cleaning up what the day left behind. For now, you drift on, memories filing themselves into place as sleep deepens its hold. While memories are being sorted and shelved, another operation begins, quieter, stranger, and for a long time, completely unknown. This is when the cleaning crew awakens. As you lie still, unaware and unbothered, your brain initiates a process that looks less like rest and more like overnight maintenance in a very exclusive building. For most of the 20th century, scientists assumed the brain, like other organs, cleaned itself constantly. Then came a surprise. A mainstream historical fact now taught in neuroscience courses is that in 2012, researchers discovered that the brain has a unique waste clearance system that becomes dramatically more active during sleep. They named it the glymphatic system, a nod to its partnership with glial cells. And yes, the name sounds like something you'd take antibiotics for. But stay with me. As you sleep, the spaces between your neurons subtly expand by as much as 60%. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's physical, measurable change. Cerebrospinal fluid begins to flow more freely through these widened channels, washing over brain tissue and carrying away metabolic waste. Proteins that build up during the day, byproducts of neural activity, are flushed out with surprising efficiency. This cleanup is one of the strongest reasons scientists insist sleep is non-negotiable. You don't feel this happening. There's no internal rinse cycle alert. But without it, things accumulate. One of the most infamous of these waste products is beta amyloid, a protein associated with Alzheimer's disease, where studies show that even a single night of poor sleep can increase detectable levels of beta amyloid in the brain. This is where the worry sharpens. Miss too much sleep, and the trash doesn't just pile up, it starts sticking around. Here's a quirky tidbit. Before this discovery, many scientists assumed the brain couldn't afford a cleaning system like the rest of the body because the skull left no room for plumbing. Turns out, the plumbing was there all along. It just clocked in after hours. Your brain is essentially running a nightly street sweeper, and it needs the roads empty to do its job. The reason this system activates during sleep appears to be chemical. When you're awake, neurons are busy firing, swelling slightly with activity. During deep sleep, neural activity slows, cells shrink just enough to open space. Wouldn't historians still argue whether this cleanup function is the primary evolutionary reason for sleep or a fortunate bonus layered onto other processes? Either way, it's hard to ignore how dependent the brain is on darkness and stillness to tidy up after itself. You might imagine this as a gentle current moving through your head, though you feel none of it. The brain is famously modest about its labor. Meanwhile, your body lies still, conserving energy, allowing this internal janitorial shift to work uninterrupted. This is one reason tossing and turning, or waking repeatedly, can blunt the effectiveness of the cleanup. The crew keeps getting interrupted. Joke number one drifts in quietly. Your brain schedules its deep cleaning for the exact moment you decide to stay up watching just one more episode. Ancient cultures had an intuitive sense of this purification. Many associated sleep with cleansing rituals, believing the mind was washed of impurities overnight. They lacked microscopes, but the metaphor wasn't wrong. Sleep is not passive, it's maintenance. The glymphatic system also appears to be posture sensitive. Studies suggest it works best when you're lying down, especially on your side. This has launched an entire subgenre of sleep advice, some of it helpful, some of it enthusiastic. Historians still argue whether humans evolved preferred sleep positions for brain health or whether this is simply an anatomical coincidence, but it does give sleep on it a whole new dimension. When this cleaning is disrupted chronically, the effects ripple outward. People report brain fog, slowed thinking, emotional volatility. These aren't just vibes, they're symptoms of a system not getting enough downtime to reset. Scientists worry because modern life seems designed to shave minutes and hours off this critical window. Joke number two, your brain needs 8 hours to take out the trash, and society keeps insisting it can do it in 4 if it just tries harder. There's still much scientists don't know. The exact timing of peak lymphatic activity, how it varies between individuals, and how it changes with age are all active areas of research. Historians still argue whether declines in this system are a cause or consequence of neurodegenerative disease. The direction of the arrow matters, and for now, it is frustratingly blurry. What's clear is that this process is exquisitely sensitive to sleep depth. Light, fragmented sleep doesn't open the channels enough. The cleaning is partial, incomplete, like rinsing a cup without scrubbing it. Over time, residue remains. As the fluid continues its slow wash, your brain grows quieter still. Electrical activity dips. Large synchronized waves dominate. The memory sorting hums down for now, its work paused until the next cycle. The night is deepening, and with the clutter clearing, emotional systems are about to take their turn adjusting the volume. Joke number 3, barely above a whisper. Even your neurons enjoy a freshly cleaned workspace. You drift further, the internal currents flowing smoothly, waste carried away without ceremony. The brain, so loud and demanding by day, performs its most delicate work in silence. And somewhere in that quiet, the stage is being set for how you'll feel about everything tomorrow. With the cleanup underway and the neural clutter quietly rinsed away, your brain turns its attention to something far less tidy: emotion. This is where scientists lean in a little closer, brows furrowed, because what happens here doesn't just affect how well you remember facts, it shapes how you feel about your entire life. The emotional volume knob is about to be adjusted, and you won't be awake to supervise. At the center of this process sits the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure best known for its role in fear and emotional salience. During the day, it's alert, reactive, and sometimes a bit dramatic. By night, particularly during certain sleep stages, its activity changes. Studies using brain imaging show that sleep helps recalibrate how strongly the amygdala responds to emotional stimuli. This is a mainstream scientific finding, and it's one reason a problem that felt unbearable at midnight can seem oddly manageable by morning. You experience this recalibration indirectly. Emotions don't vanish overnight, they soften. Sharp edges round off. The brain is essentially reviewing emotional reactions and deciding which ones were proportional and which ones maybe not. This doesn't mean sleep makes you numb. It means sleep makes you fairer to yourself and to the world. Here's a quirky tidbit. People deprived of sleep show amygdala responses up to 60% stronger when exposed to negative images compared to well-rested individuals. In other words, lack of sleep turns your emotional amplifier way past reasonable. Your brain without sleep is not more honest, it's just louder. This emotional tuning happens in close coordination with the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for regulation, context, and impulse control. During healthy sleep, communication between these regions is restored. The prefrontal cortex regains its ability to say, yes, that was upsetting, but maybe not apocalyptic. Scientists worry when sleep is cut short because this connection weakens, leaving emotion without a moderator. Historians still argue whether emotional regulation is a primary evolutionary function of sleep or a secondary benefit of neural maintenance. Did sleep evolve to keep us emotionally stable in social groups? Or did emotional stability simply emerge from a well-rested brain? Either way, the social implications are enormous. A tired brain is not just unhappy, it's unpredictable. You drift through dreams that carry emotional undertones rather than clear narratives. A sense of unease without a cause, comfort without a story. This is your brain processing feelings in a stripped-down form, decoupled from specific events. Dreams here often feel symbolic, but they're less about hidden meanings and more about exposure. The brain is letting emotions rise and fall without real-world consequences. Joke number 1 slides in gently. Your brain is putting your feelings in timeout, not to punish them, but to let everyone cool off. Across cultures, sleep has long been linked to emotional wisdom. Sleep on it, elders advised. Long before functional MRI machines existed, they noticed that time and rest changed perspective. Neuroscience now suggests they were right for reasons deeper than intuition. Sleep doesn't just give you time, it actively reshapes emotional responses. This is also why nightmares tend to cluster during periods of stress. When emotional load is high, the brain has more material to process. Nightmares aren't failures of sleep, they're intense processing sessions. Historians still argue whether nightmares serve an adaptive function, preparing you for threats, or whether they're simply emotion overflowing its usual channels. The debate remains unsettled. You remain unaware of this fine-tuning. From the inside, there may be only drifting sensations, half-remembered feelings, a sense of movement without direction. But inside your skull, odd circuits are being adjusted with long-term consequences. How reactive you'll be tomorrow, how patient, how forgiving. Joke number 2. Sleep is cheaper than therapy, but unfortunately not optional. When this process is disrupted by fragmented sleep, chronic deprivation, or artificial light, the emotional recalibration is incomplete. The amygdala stays loud. The prefrontal cortex stays sluggish. Over time, this imbalance has been linked to anxiety disorders, depression, and mood instability. Scientists worry because modern sleep patterns are trending shorter and more broken, and emotional health is paying the price. There's another layer to this. Sleep doesn't just dampen negative emotion, it preserves positive emotion too. Joy, satisfaction, connection. These are reinforced when sleep is healthy. Without sleep, emotional life flattens into irritability and exhaustion. The highs aren't as high, and the lows feel endless. Joke number 3, barely there. Your brain needs sleep to remember that not everything is a crisis. As this emotional tuning settles into place, your brain prepares to shift gears again. The volume knob is set. The cleanup crew continues its silent work. And soon the night will reach a phase where emotion doesn't just soften, it explodes into full color and intensity. For now, though, everything feels balanced, quiet, regulated. Your brain is teaching itself how to feel again, without the noise of the day interfering. And as the night rolls forward, that emotional calm will give way to something far more vivid, far more immersive, where feelings are no longer adjusted gently, but unleashed. As the emotional systems finish their careful recalibration, the night doesn't stay gentle for long. For some sleepers, this is where things take a sharp turn. The calm gives way to intensity. Images grow darker, more urgent. Dreams stop drifting and start chasing. This is the territory of nightmares, and despite centuries of folklore, scientists still don't fully agree on why your brain sometimes chooses fear as its nighttime language. Nightmares are not rare glitches. They are a recognized part of human sleep architecture. A mainstream historical fact anchors them firmly in biology. Nightmares most often emerge during REM sleep, when the brain is highly active, emotions are amplified, and rational oversight is largely offline. Your amygdala is lit up, your prefrontal cortex is dialed down, and the result is raw, into unfiltered emotional storytelling. You experience this as threat without context, panic without preparation. The dream doesn't ask if you're ready, it drops you straight into the middle of something that feels urgent and real. Heart racing, muscles tense. Even though your body is safely still, your brain is acting as if survival is on the line. Here's a quirky tidbit that unsettles researchers to this day. People across cultures report remarkably similar nightmare themes: being chased, falling, trapped, or exposed. Despite wildly different lives and histories, the brain seems to reach for the same handful of fear narratives. This has led some scientists to propose the threat simulation theory, which suggests nightmares evolved to rehearse danger in a safe environment. Historians still argue whether this theory holds up. Some believe nightmares are adaptive, sharpening responses to real-world threats. Others argue they're simply emotional overflow, stress and fear spilling into dreams when daytime processing isn't enough. The debate remains open, and your brain doesn't seem interested in waiting for consensus. From the inside, nightmares feel invasive, even hijacking. That's because the systems that normally tell you this isn't real are mostly offline. The prefrontal cortex, the voice of reason, is quiet. The emotional centers are not. The balance tips hard toward feeling overthinking. Joke number 1 slips in dryly. Your brain has decided now is the perfect time to screen its worst-case scenarios with no option to skip ads. Nightmares often cluster during periods of stress, trauma, or sleep disruption. When emotional regulation during earlier stages is incomplete, REM sleep can become more volatile. The brain is still trying to process unresolved fear, but now it's doing so at full volume. Scientists worry about this because frequent nightmares aren't just unpleasant, they're linked to anxiety disorders, PTSD, and chronic sleep fragmentation. Physiologically, your body reacts even though it can't move freely. Heart rate increases, breathing quickens, stress hormones like cortisol may spike. You're not imagining how real it feels. Your brain is activating many of the same pathways it would use in waking fear. The difference is that escape isn't an option. Ancient cultures often interpreted nightmares as omens or attacks by malevolent forces. While modern neuroscience doesn't support demon visitations, it does confirm that nightmares reflect genuine distress signals. Your brain is not trying to torture you, it's trying, clumsily, to process something overwhelming. Joke number 2, Unfortunately, your brain has terrible bedside manners when it's stressed. There's also evidence that nightmares serve a paradoxical role. In some cases, repeatedly dreaming about feared situations can reduce their emotional impact over time, similar to exposure therapy. This suggests that nightmares may sometimes be an attempt at healing that overshoots its mark. Too much intensity, too little control. Children experience nightmares more frequently than adults, likely because their emotional regulation systems are still developing. This offers a clue. Nightmares may be a sign of a brain still learning how to balance fear, memory, and imagination. When adults aren't exempt, we're just better at forgetting them by morning. Joke number 3 whispered after the fact. Your brain thought this was a productive idea at the time. When nightmares wake you, they fragment sleep, pulling you abruptly back through the gates the thalamus works so hard to close. The emotional charge can linger, making it harder to fall back asleep. Scientists worry about this feedback loop. Stress causes nightmares. Nightmares disrupt sleep. Disrupted sleep amplifies stress. Yet nightmares also highlight something important. Even at its most frightening, the sleeping brain is active, purposeful, and deeply invested in emotional processing. Fear isn't a malfunction. It's a signal turned too high. As the night continues, your brain has another safeguard in place, one designed to keep those intense dream actions from spilling into the physical world. Because if your body acted out every chase, every fall, every desperate escape, well, that would be a problem. And so as the dreams grow vivid and volatile, another switch flips, one that locks your body down while your mind runs wild. Just as dreams reach their most vivid, intense, and occasionally unhinged moments, your brain pulls an emergency brake on your body. This is the phase where paralysis steps in, not as a glitch, but as a carefully engineered safety feature. While your mind runs, your muscles are told, very firmly, to stay put. This phenomenon is known as rematonia, and it's a mainstream, well-documented neurological fact. During REM sleep, signals from the brainstem actively inhibit motor neurons, preventing voluntary muscle movement. In simple terms, your brain disconnects intention from action. You can dream about sprinting, punching, or dramatically leaping off rooftops, and your body will remain mostly still, perhaps twitching a finger or toe at most. You experience this invisibly. There's no sensation of being turned off. From inside the dream, movement feels real. The disconnect only becomes apparent if something goes wrong, if you partially wake while the paralysis is still engaged. That's when things get memorable. Here's a quirky tidbit. Rematonia is so powerful that if it fails, people may physically act out their dreams, a condition known as REM sleep behavior disorder. Individuals have been known to shout, punch, or leap from beds while dreaming. This disorder is rare but significant, and scientists watch it closely because it can be an early indicator of neurodegenerative disease. Again, the worry creeps in. Historians still argue whether paralysis evolved primarily to prevent self-injury or to conserve energy during dream-heavy sleep. Both explanations have merit. Acting out dreams would have been dangerous in ancestral environments, but so would unnecessary movement during a vulnerable state. Either way, immobility won. Joke number 1 slips in here. Your brain trusts itself with elaborate dream plots, but absolutely does not trust your limbs. For most of the night, this paralysis works flawlessly. You lie still, breathing steadily, eyes darting beneath closed lids. Your nervous system is partitioned, mind active, body restrained. It's an elegant solution to a potentially chaotic problem. Sleep paralysis, the unsettling experience where you wake unable to move, is the flip side of this system. It happens when consciousness returns before muscle control does. You may feel pressure on your chest, sense a presence, or experience intense fear. These sensations have fueled centuries of folklore about night demons and shadowy intruders. Neuroscience offers a less dramatic but no less unsettling explanation. Your brain's safety lock hasn't disengaged yet. Joke number 2, gently offered, your brain meant well. It just forgot to coordinate the wake-up call. This state highlights how layered consciousness really is. You can be awake enough to perceive, but asleep enough to remain immobilized. The systems don't always transition cleanly, especially under stress or sleep deprivation. Scientists worry because frequent sleep paralysis episodes are linked to irregular sleep schedules and chronic sleep loss, conditions increasingly common. Despite its fear factor, paralysis itself is not dangerous. Breathing continues, heart rate remains regulated, and the episode usually resolves within seconds to minutes. The danger lies in the panic it can provoke, which can further disrupt sleep and increase anxiety around bedtime. Across cultures, people independently describe similar paralysis experiences long before modern science. The consistency is striking. Different names, same sensations. This universality suggests a shared neural mechanism, a reminder that sleep is deeply biological, not cultural. Joke number 3 drifts by softly. Your brain invented this feature long before customer feedback was a thing. As the night cycles continue, paralysis switches on and off in rhythm with REM periods. You pass through multiple rounds of this throughout the night, each time trusting your brain to keep body and dream properly separated. Most of the time, you never notice. But scientists pay close attention here because when this separation fails, either through acting out dreams or waking within paralysis, it reveals just how active and delicate the sleeping brain really is. Nothing about sleep is passive. It's a series of controlled risks, carefully managed. With your body safely immobilized, your brain is free to push REM sleep further. Activity surges, memory fragments, emotions, and imagination collide. Time dissolves. Consciousness is about to enter one of its strangest states yet, one where your brain is almost as active as when you're awake, but you are nowhere to be found. With your body safely locked down, your brain takes the opportunity to light itself up. This is REM sleep in full bloom, the phase where scientists look at brain scans and do a double take, because the activity they see rivals and sometimes exceeds that of wakefulness. If sleep were supposed to be shutting off, this would be the most confusing evidence imaginable. During REM, large regions of your brain surge with activity, visual areas flare, even though your eyes are closed. Emotional centers hum loudly. Memory networks exchange signals at speed. This is a mainstream, not well-established finding. EEG and imaging studies consistently show that the sleeping brain during REM looks startlingly awake. The key difference isn't activity level, it's coordination. You experience this as immersion. Dreams stop feeling like thoughts and start feeling like places. There's depth, motion, urgency. Scenes unfold with cinematic confidence, even when the plot makes no sense. You rarely question it because the part of your brain responsible for skepticism, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, is comparatively quiet. Logic has clocked out. Imagination has been handed the keys. Here's a quirky tidbit that still fascinates researchers. REM sleep is most abundant in early life. Newborns spend roughly half their sleep in REM, compared to about 20 to 25% for adults. Some scientists suspect REM plays a critical role in brain development, helping wire neural circuits through intense internal stimulation. Your brain learned how to be a brain, in part, by dreaming before it ever understood reality. Historians still argue whether REM sleep evolved primarily for neural development, emotional processing, or creative problem solving. Each theory has supporting evidence, and none fully explain why the brain would choose such an energetically expensive state during its most vulnerable hours. Yet REM persists, conserved across mammals and even birds. Evolution doesn't usually keep flashy features without good reason. Inside REM, time becomes meaningless. You might dream what feels like an entire narrative arc, beginning, middle, end, only to wake and discover it lasted a few minutes. This distortion happens because the brain regions responsible for temporal tracking are disengaged. Without them, experience stretches or collapses freely. Joke number 1 slides in here. Your brain can generate an epic trilogy in less time than it takes you to hit snooze. Emotion during REM is intense and unfiltered. The amygdala is highly active, which explains why dreams here can feel exhilarating, terrifying, or profoundly meaningful. Joy and fear both get amplified. This emotional saturation is part of why REM is so important and why scientists worry when it's cut short. Antidepressants, alcohol, and chronic sleep deprivation can all suppress REM with subtle but significant emotional consequences. Memory behaves differently here too. REM seems especially involved in integrating memories, linking new experiences with older, distant ones. This is why dreams often mash together timelines, people, and places. Your brain is searching for patterns, building associations that waking logic might never attempt. Sometimes this results in creative insight. Sometimes it results in you being late for an exam you haven't taken in 10 years. Joke number 2, drifting lazily. Your brain insists this is all very important, but declines to explain why. Physiologically, your autonomic nervous system shifts. Breathing becomes irregular. Heart rate fluctuates. Sexual arousal may occur regardless of dream content. A reminder that REM activates systems broadly, not selectively. These bodily changes once led researchers to mistakenly think dreams were purely physical phenomena. Now we know they're part of a whole brain state, coordinated and deliberate. While ancient cultures often viewed dreams as journeys or messages precisely because of this intensity, they felt different, more real, more charged. Neuroscience agrees on the different part, if not the divine messenger angle. REM dreams engage perception and emotion in ways waking imagination rarely does. There's an ongoing scholarly debate nested right here. Historians still argue whether the bizarre, illogical nature of REM dreams is essential to their function or merely a side effect of neural disinhibition. Does the brain need nonsense to find new meaning? Or is nonsense just what happens when constraints are lifted? The answer remains elusive. What's clear is that REM is not optional filler. When deprived of REM, the brain compensates by entering it faster and staying longer on subsequent nights, a phenomenon called REM rebound. This rebound underscores how strongly the brain values this state. Deny it, and it pushes back. Joke number 3 murmurs softly. Your brain will collect its dream time one way or another. As the REM phase peaks, consciousness is paradoxical. You're deeply asleep, yet your brain is vividly alive. You are present inside experiences that feel convincing, emotional, and complete, but you are absent as an observer. There is no you questioning the scenario, only participation. Scientists watch REM closely because disruptions here echo outward. Poor REM sleep is linked to mood disorders, impaired learning, and emotional rigidity. Modern life, with its fragmented nights and early alarms, tends to cut REM short, since REM periods lengthen toward morning. This means many people miss the richest, a most emotionally integrative sleep their brains are expecting. Eventually, the surge begins to fade. Activity dips. Paralysis loosens slightly. The brain prepares to cycle again, moving back toward deeper, quieter stages before the next REM ascent. The night is rhythmic, not linear, a looping pattern of descent and eruption. You remain unaware of these cycles, carried along by a brain that knows exactly where it's going, even when you don't. REM recedes for now, leaving behind subtle changes, connections made, emotions stirred, memories rethreaded. And as the fire dims, something even stranger emerges, a complete collapse of your sense of time, space, and continuity, where hours vanish and the night passes without leaving footprints. Somewhere between one dream and the next, something fundamental disappears. Not memory, and not emotion. Time itself slips through your fingers. This is the phase where your brain completely loses its grip on chronology, and when you wake later, the night will feel like a single blank space, despite hours of intense internal activity. You experience this as absence, no sense of waiting, no awareness of passing minutes. You close your eyes and suddenly it's morning. From the inside, the night has no duration. From the outside, it's a complex sequence of carefully timed neural states. This disconnect is one of sleep's strangest features, and it hinges on how your brain constructs time in the first place. A mainstream neurological fact anchors this. Your sense of time relies heavily on coordinated activity in the prefrontal cortex and parietal regions, areas that track sequence, duration, and expectation. During deep sleep and REM sleep, these regions are either quiet or working in isolation. Without their collaboration, the brain cannot generate a reliable timeline. Experience still happens, but it doesn't get stamped with before and after. You drift through this timelessness effortlessly. Events don't line up. They simply occur. Dreams jump scenes without explanation. Moments feel endless until they're gone. This is why even the most vivid dream can vanish instantly upon waking. Without time markers, there's nothing to hook memory onto. Here's a quirky tidbit. Astronauts report similar temporal distortions during space missions, where external cues like sunrise and sunset are disrupted. The brain, deprived of anchors, struggles to track time accurately. Sleep creates a similar internal environment, isolated, cueless, floating. Historians still argue whether time perception is an emergent property of consciousness or a dedicated cognitive function layered on top of awareness. Sleep offers evidence for the latter. You can be conscious enough to experience dreams, yet incapable of tracking duration. Awareness without time, existence without clocks. Joke number 1 drifts in softly. Your brain deletes timestamps at night to save storage space. This loss of time perception is not accidental. It's protective. If you remained aware of time passing while asleep, every night would feel interminable. Waiting to wake would become a form of low-grade torture. By collapsing hours into nothing, the brain spares you that experience and allows sleep to feel efficient, even generous. Physiologically, when this timelessness coincides with changes in neuromodulators like dopamine and acetylcholine, which influence attention and prediction. Without prediction, there is no anticipation. Without anticipation, time has nowhere to live. The brain stops asking, "What's next?" and simply responds to what is. You may briefly brush against this state if you wake during the night and feel disoriented, unsure how long you've been asleep, or even what day it is. That confusion isn't grogginess. It's your timekeeping system rebooting. Scientists worry when this disorientation becomes frequent or prolonged, as it can signal fragmented sleep or neurological strain. Dream narratives during this phase can feel oddly complete despite lacking structure. You may sense that something took a long time without knowing how long. Emotional arcs exist without duration. This reinforces the idea that time is not required for meaning, only for memory. Ancient philosophies touched on this intuitively. Many describe sleep as a temporary death, a state outside time where the self dissolves. While modern neuroscience avoids metaphysics, it agrees on the mechanics. Sleep suspends the frameworks that make time intelligible. Joke number 2 murmurs gently, "Your brain clocks out so hard at night it forgets clocks exist." This timelessness also explains why sleep deprivation feels so brutal. When you're awake too long, time stretches painfully. Minutes drag, seconds itch. The brain is stuck tracking duration without relief. Sleep resets this system, compressing hours into nothing and restoring your tolerance for time passing at all. There's another debate folded into this phenomenon. Historians still argue whether the collapse of time perception is necessary for sleep's restorative effects or merely a side effect of deeper neural disengagement. Does the brain need to escape time to heal, or does healing simply happen to erase time as collateral damage? No one knows yet. What scientists do know is that aging affects this process. Older adults often report lighter sleep and increased nighttime awareness. The night feels longer, more broken. This correlates with changes in slow-wave sleep and prefrontal disengagement. The brain doesn't fall out of time as easily as it once did, and rest becomes harder to come by. Joke number 3, delivered kindly. Your younger brain vanished for 8 hours straight and called it refreshing. As the cycles continue, what your brain repeatedly enters and exits this timeless void. Each return erases the sense of what came before. That's why the night doesn't stack up as memories. It collapses inward, leaving only traces. A dream fragment, a feeling, maybe the echo of waking briefly to turn over. From the inside, there is no boredom here, no waiting, just a soft blankness punctuated by bursts of imagery. From the outside, your brain is still working through its checklist, moving methodically through stages, keeping you alive, regulated, and ready. Scientists watch this carefully because when time perception intrudes too often, when you're half awake all night, it signals that sleep is failing to do its job. The night becomes long again, heavy, unsatisfying. The brain never fully lets go. But tonight you drift cleanly. Time slips away without resistance. When hours vanish without complaint, the night folds in on itself, and you move through it without leaving footprints. And somewhere ahead, as the cycles repeat and the morning draws closer, the night will begin to show its wear, revealing what happens when sleep falters, fragments, or goes wrong. The trouble begins quietly, not with a dramatic collapse, but with small fractures in the night, tiny interruptions your brain tries to ignore, a brief awakening, a shallow stretch of sleep where depth never quite arrives, one restless turn too many. This is where sleep goes wrong, and scientists start paying very close attention. From the inside, it often feels like nothing happened. You slept. You were in bed for hours, but your brain knows the difference between time spent unconscious and sleep that actually did its job. A mainstream medical fact underscores this. Fragmented sleep can be just as damaging as too little sleep, even when total hours look fine on paper. Quality matters. Continuity matters. You experience poor sleep as fog, as emotional volatility, as that low-level sense that everything requires more effort than it should. This isn't weakness, it's biology. When sleep stages are repeatedly interrupted, the brain struggles to complete the processes you have already drifted through tonight. Memory consolidation, emotional regulation, neural cleanup. Each awakening resets the progress bar. Insomnia is one of the most common ways sleep goes wrong. Contrary to popular belief, it's not simply the inability to fall asleep. It's often the inability to stay asleep or to reach deeper stages consistently. The brain remains on alert, gates half open, one thalamus unwilling to fully commit. Stress hormones linger. The night never deepens. Here's a quirky tidbit. People with insomnia often show heightened brain activity even during sleep, particularly in areas linked to self-monitoring. It's as if part of the brain refuses to stop checking whether it's asleep yet. A frustrating paradox. Trying harder to sleep keeps you awake. Historians still argue whether insomnia is primarily a disorder of sleep itself or of hyperarousal, an overactive brain that never learned how to disengage. This debate matters because it shapes treatment. Do you sedate the brain or retrain it to feel safe enough to let go? Sleep apnea is another common failure mode, and it's sneakier than insomnia. The sleeper often has no idea it's happening. Breathing repeatedly stops and starts, oxygen dips, and the brain jolts the body awake just enough to reopen the airway. These micro-awakenings can occur dozens, even hundreds of times per night. You're never fully awake, but you're never fully asleep either. Joke number one lands softly. Your brain spends the night playing lifeguard for your breathing instead of doing literally anything else on its to-do list. The consequences add up. Memory suffers. Emotional regulation frays. The glymphatic cleanup you visited earlier becomes incomplete night after night. Scientists worry about this pattern because chronic sleep fragmentation is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, and cognitive decline. Sleep isn't a luxury add-on, it's infrastructure. There's also the problem of circadian misalignment, when your internal clock and your actual schedule don't agree. Shift work, jet lag, late-night screens, and irregular routines all confuse the brain's sense of when night is supposed to happen. Melatonin release gets delayed or blunted. Sleep stages slide out of alignment. REM gets squeezed. Historians still argue whether humans evolved as strictly diurnal sleepers or as more flexible nappers with segmented nights. What's clear is that modern schedules push flexibility past its limits. The brain can adapt, but not indefinitely. You feel this misalignment as being tired but wired, exhausted but unable to rest. Your body wants sleep. Your brain hasn't received the memo. Joke number two, it's like showing up to a party after everyone's already gone home, including you. Well, mental health and sleep failures are deeply entangled. Depression, anxiety, and PTSD all alter sleep architecture, and disrupted sleep, in turn, worsens these conditions. Scientists still argue about directionality, which comes first, but the loop is undeniable. Break the sleep, and the mind follows. Treat the sleep, and many symptoms soften. Even short-term sleep disruption has measurable effects. Reaction times slow, risk-taking increases, Emotional misinterpretation becomes more likely. Studies show that sleep-deprived brains are more likely to read neutral faces as threatening. Your perception of reality shifts, not because the world changed, but because your brain's filters did. Joke number 3, offered kindly. Your tired brain is not seeing things clearly, and it should not be trusted with major life decisions. Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable to sleep going wrong. Their brains are still developing, and chronic sleep loss can affect emotional regulation, learning, and impulse control. Early school start times collide with delayed adolescent circadian rhythms, creating a biological mismatch that scientists have been arguing about for decades. Aging brings its own challenges. Slow-wave sleep decreases, awakenings increase, the night becomes lighter, more porous. Scientists still argue whether this is an inevitable feature of aging or a modifiable condition influenced by health, activity, and environment. The answer appears to be some of both. What worries researchers most is not the occasional bad night. That's normal. But the normalization of chronic sleep failure. In the quiet acceptance that being tired is just how adulthood feels. The brain, meanwhile, keeps paying the price in slow, cumulative ways. And yet, even when sleep goes wrong, the brain doesn't give up. It compensates. It steals moments where it can. Microsleeps, daydreams, that irresistible afternoon crash. These are emergency measures, not solutions, but they reveal how fiercely the brain protects its need for rest. As the night continues, your brain will keep cycling, doing what it can with the conditions it's given. Some nights are smooth, others are patchwork. Scientists watch these patterns not to judge, but to understand where intervention helps and where biology simply needs patience. Ahead, the story turns toward how these nighttime processes change over a lifetime, how the sleeping brain evolves, adapts, and then sometimes struggles as years accumulate. For now, you drift on, carried by a brain doing its best to hold the night together, even when sleep doesn't quite cooperate. The night feels different as years accumulate, even if you can't quite put your finger on how. You drift now through a brain that has done this thousands, tens of thousands of times before, and it carries that history quietly. Sleep still comes, but it arrives lighter, more easily disturbed, like a familiar visitor who no longer stays as long as they used to. As the brain ages, its nighttime architecture subtly reshapes itself. A mainstream neurological fact sits at the center of this change. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the heavy, restorative kind, declines with age. The brain still cycles through the same stages, but the valleys aren't as deep. The waves not as tall. You may fall asleep quickly, yet wake more often, hover closer to the surface, feel the night stretch out again. You experience this as fragility. A sound wakes you. A thought slips in and lingers. The timeless void you once fell into so easily now feels perforated, threaded with awareness. This isn't simply bad sleep. It's a brain whose systems are aging at different rates, some still eager to disengage, others more reluctant to let go. Here's a quirky tidbit. Older adults often produce less melatonin, the hormone that signals night to the brain. This doesn't just affect falling asleep. It alters the entire cascade of sleep stages. Historians still argue whether this decline is an unavoidable feature of aging or a side effect of reduced daylight exposure, modern indoor living, and changed routines. And the answer seems to be a quiet combination of both. Memory processing changes too. The hippocampus still replays the day, but with less coordination from slow waves. Emotional regulation becomes more vulnerable to disruption. The glymphatic cleanup you visited earlier still runs, but less efficiently. Scientists worry about this because aging brains are more sensitive to the consequences of missed or fragmented sleep. The margin for error narrows, and yet this is not a story of simple decline. Older brains often show increased efficiency in other ways. Less emotional volatility, better prioritization, a quieter response to minor stress. Historians still argue whether this emotional steadiness comes from sleep changes or from accumulated experience reshaping neural pathways. Biology and wisdom blur together here. You drift through dreams that may feel shorter, thinner, more abstract. REM still arrives, but its timing shifts. Wakefulness presses in earlier. Morning comes faster than it used to. The night no longer disappears completely, it leaves impressions. Joke number one, gentle and kind. Your brain didn't get worse at sleeping, it just got more opinionated. Even so, the sleeping brain keeps adapting. It steals rest where it can. It leans harder on routine, darkness, and consistency. It becomes less tolerant of chaos and more appreciative of calm. Scientists studying aging and sleep emphasize this again and again. The older brain still needs sleep just as deeply. It simply needs more help getting it. Joke number two, your brain now prefers reservations, not surprises. As the night stretches on, everything begins to soften. The pace slows. The imagery thins. The cycles ease into one another with less drama. There is no urgency here, only continuation. Your breathing evens out. Thoughts grow longer, quieter, more spaced apart. Sentences in your mind trail off without needing to finish. The brain, having done its work, sorting, cleaning, tuning, dreaming, allows itself to rest in the spaces between. Historians still argue whether sleep's ultimate purpose is repair, regulation, or simply survival. Lying here, none of that matters. What matters is that your brain has carried you through another night, adapting itself once again to the shape of your life. Now the imagery fades, not sharply but gently, like fog lifting without revealing anything in particular. The world feels far away, safe, held at a distance. You don't need to understand what your brain has done tonight. You don't need to monitor it or improve it or optimize it. It knows what it's doing, even when scientists are still catching up. So let yourself sink a little more. Let the remaining thoughts loosen and drift. Let the night finish its quiet work. There is nothing you need to solve right now. Nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to be. Just this steady breath, this soft dark, this brain finally allowed to let go. The night keeps moving, even when it feels like it has settled. Beneath the calm surface, your brain carries the weight of years. And this is where scientists grow especially attentive. The aging brain at night doesn't just sleep differently, it cleans differently, repairs differently, and recovers with a little more caution than it once did. As you drift, the glymphatic system you met earlier is still at work, but not with the same youthful efficiency. A mainstream scientific finding shows that the flow of cerebrospinal fluid through the brain slows with age. The channels don't open quite as wide. The rinse cycle isn't as thorough. Waste still clears, but more gradually, more selectively. This subtle shift is one reason researchers are so focused on sleep quality in older adults. It's not about more sleep, but better aligned sleep. You don't feel this slow down directly. You feel it indirectly in how long it takes to feel mentally sharp in the morning, or how easily fatigue settles into your thoughts. The brain compensates where it can, prioritizing essential cleanup over cosmetic polish. It's less concerned with perfection now, more with sustainability. So here's a quirky tidbit. Studies suggest that deep, slow-wave sleep, the stage most closely linked to glymphatic activity, declines steadily after early adulthood, sometimes beginning as early as the 30s. This doesn't mean your brain gives up on cleaning. It means it schedules smarter, shorter maintenance windows. Historians still argue whether this change reflects unavoidable biological aging or centuries of lifestyle drift away from natural light-dark cycles. The debate remains open and probably personal. Memory systems adapt alongside cleanup. The hippocampus still replays experiences, but the emphasis shifts. Older brains tend to consolidate emotional meaning over exact detail. You might forget names or dates, yet remember how something felt with surprising clarity. This isn't just nostalgia, it's neural economics. When resources tighten, the brain invests in relevance. Joke number one drifts in softly. Your brain has stopped keeping receipts, but it absolutely remembers how the service made it feel. Scientists worry about what happens when aging-related changes collide with chronic sleep disruption. Reduced cleanup plus fragmented sleep creates conditions where metabolic waste accumulates more easily. This is why poor sleep is increasingly viewed not just as a symptom of neurodegenerative disease, but as a potential contributor. Historians still argue whether sleep decline causes brain disease or whether early disease disrupts sleep first. The arrow of causality is still under fierce debate. Emotionally, aging brains often show a fascinating shift at night. Negative emotional reactivity tends to decrease, while positive emotional memory remains relatively preserved. Some researchers call this the positivity effect. Whether this emerges from sleep-related changes or from lifetime learning is still unclear, but the result is noticeable. Worries soften faster, grudges fade more easily, and the night feels less hostile than it once did. Joke number 2, gentle and true. Your brain has seen enough to know most things can wait until morning. Dreams may feel different now too. Less cinematic, more symbolic, sometimes shorter, sometimes strangely profound. REM sleep still happens, but it's more fragmented, more vulnerable to early awakening. Scientists don't see this as failure, more like adaptation. The brain still dreams, just with a lighter touch. There's also growing interest in how lifestyle can support the aging brain at night. Regular sleep schedules, physical activity, daylight exposure, and even social engagement all appear to strengthen sleep architecture. None of these stop aging, but they smooth the process. Historians still argue whether humans once aged with better sleep due to more natural rhythms, or whether aging sleep has always been lighter and we're just more aware of it now. As you lie here drifting, your brain leans into what it knows works: familiar routines, familiar environments, predictability. The older brain values safety at night above novelty. This is why unfamiliar beds feel more disruptive later in life, and why rituals, reading, quiet music, dim light matter more than ever. Joke number 3 slides in with a smile. Your brain doesn't want an adventure at bedtime. It wants a signed agreement and a cup of tea. Despite all this, the aging brain remains remarkably resilient. It continues to adapt, reroute, and compensate. When one system slows, another steps in. When deep sleep shortens, emotional regulation often improves. When memory detail fades, wisdom fills the gaps. Sleep changes, but its purpose remains. Scientists studying aging and sleep often emphasize this perspective. The goal is not to sleep like you did at 20, but to sleep in a way that supports who you are now. Comparison is unhelpful. Alignment is everything. The night feels quieter here, less dramatic. The brain doesn't surge and crash as sharply. It glides. Cycles blur. The urgency of repair gives way to maintenance, then to simple rest. As the hours continue, the brain settles into a steady rhythm it has learned through repetition. It knows how much effort to spend. It knows when to let go, and somewhere ahead the focus will shift again, away from age and towards something more modern, more intrusive. The influence of technology, light, and constant connection on a brain that evolved for darkness. For now, though, you rest inside a brain that has done this many times before, still capable, still learning, still quietly taking care of itself through the night. Even as your brain settles into its familiar nighttime rhythms, something distinctly modern presses in from the edges. Not predators, not cold, not hunger. Light, screens, signals, a world that never fully goes dark. This is where scientists begin to sound genuinely uneasy, because the sleeping brain you're drifting through was not designed for this version of night. Your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that tells your brain when to be awake and when to sleep, is ancient. A mainstream biological fact grounds this. It's regulated primarily by light exposure, especially blue wavelengths that signal daytime. For most of human history, night meant darkness broken only by firelight and stars. Now night glows. Phones, tablets, streetlights, alarm clocks, laptops. Your brain notices all of it. You feel this disruption as resistance. Sleep doesn't arrive when you expect it to. Or it arrives, but lightly, like it's prepared to leave at the first notification. Melatonin release is delayed. The signal for night becomes ambiguous. Your brain hesitates, unsure whether to commit. Here's a quirky tidbit that feels almost cruel. Even brief exposure to bright screens in the evening can suppress melatonin for hours, not minutes. Hours. Your brain interprets that glow as a small artificial sunrise. Historians still argue whether the human brain can ever fully adapt to constant artificial light, or whether this mismatch will always exact a biological cost. Technology doesn't just delay sleep, it fragments it. Notifications pull at your attention even after you've stopped consciously checking. The brain learns to expect interruption. The thalamic gates you visited earlier stay slightly ajar, just in case. This hypervigilance bleeds into sleep, making deeper stages harder to reach. Joke number one slips in dryly. Your brain is trying to enter a prehistoric sleep mode while you keep handing it futuristic distractions. Scientists worry because this isn't an occasional problem. It's chronic. Shortened nights, later bedtimes, earlier alarms. REM sleep squeezed by schedules rather than biology. Because REM periods lengthen toward morning, cutting sleep short often means cutting off the very stages most involved in emotional regulation and integration. The effects accumulate subtly. Mood becomes more brittle. Focus frays. Emotional reactions sharpen. People often blame stress, work, or personality, not realizing their brain simply hasn't finished its nightly emotional tuning. Historians still argue whether modern anxiety levels reflect cultural pressures or widespread sleep debt. The truth likely lives in the overlap. Artificial light also scrambles seasonal cues. In the past, longer nights in winter meant more sleep. Now seasons barely register indoors. This flattening may affect mood regulation, especially for people prone to seasonal depression. Your brain still expects cycles. We've removed most of them. Joke number two, your brain misses winter nights, even if you don't. There's also the psychological intrusion of constant connection. Social media, news feeds, and endless content give the brain no clean stopping point. In the past, darkness enforced closure. Now there's always one more thing. The brain never receives a clear signal that the day is over. Sleep becomes an interruption rather than a destination. Historians still argue whether humans are uniquely vulnerable to this kind of cognitive overstimulation, or whether any sufficiently advanced society would face the same sleep erosion. What's clear is that the brain hasn't caught up. Evolution moves slowly. What technology does not. Children and adolescents are especially affected. Their circadian rhythms naturally shift later, while early schedules remain fixed. Ad screens and sleep debt compounds quickly. Scientists worry about long-term effects on emotional development and learning. A brain that never finishes its nightly work grows up underprepared. Joke number three, gentle but pointed. Your brain did not sign up for bedtime doom scrolling. And yet, the brain adapts as best it can. It squeezes in REM where possible. It compensates with micro rests. It recalibrates expectations. Humans are remarkably flexible, but flexibility has limits. When sleep becomes consistently compromised, the cracks show. As you drift now, imagine what your brain is asking for. Not optimization, not perfection, just darkness, just predictability. So just enough quiet to do what it's always done best when given the chance. The night doesn't need to be productive. It needs to be uninterrupted. Ahead, the story turns toward what happens when that interruption becomes extreme. When sleep is stripped away almost entirely, and the brain begins to reveal how fragile its stability truly is. For now, you rest at the edge of a modern night, your ancient brain doing its best to remember what darkness used to mean. There is a point where adaptation stops working, where the brain can no longer borrow, compress, or compensate. This is the edge scientists study with a kind of cautious fascination. What happens when sleep is taken away almost entirely? Not delayed, not fragmented, removed. And what that reveals about how thin the line really is between stability and unraveling. And sleep deprivation doesn't announce itself dramatically at first. It starts with softness, slowed reactions, a wandering mind. You feel this as clumsiness, forgetfulness, emotional overreaction to small things. A mainstream scientific fact anchors this stage. After about 24 hours without sleep, cognitive performance can resemble mild intoxication. Judgment suffers, attention fractures, and yet confidence often remains. The brain is impaired but unaware of it. You drift through this state imagining you're functioning fine, while your neural systems quietly disagree. Here's a quirky tidbit that unsettles researchers. Sleep-deprived brains often show brief intrusions of sleep while awake, called microsleeps. For a second or two, small regions of the brain simply go offline. Eyes may stay open, you may keep moving. But parts of you are asleep. Historians still argue whether microsleeps are a last-ditch protective mechanism or a sign that the brain is beginning to lose centralized control. As deprivation continues, emotional regulation deteriorates rapidly. The amygdala becomes hyperreactive, while the prefrontal cortex, already fragile without sleep, struggles to keep up. You feel this as irritability, paranoia, or sudden sadness without clear cause. The brain is no longer tuning emotion, it's amplifying it. Joke number one lands softly but honestly. Your brain without sleep has the emotional maturity of a toddler with access to heavy machinery. After 48 hours, perception itself begins to warp. Sensory filtering breaks down. Sounds feel sharper. Lights feel harsher. Some people report shadows moving, patterns breathing, odd voices murmuring at the edge of hearing. These are not dreams leaking in. They're perception losing its stabilizers. Scientists worry here because the boundary between waking and dreaming begins to dissolve. There's a long-standing scholarly debate woven into this phase. Historians still argue whether hallucinations during sleep deprivation are caused by REM intrusion into wakefulness or by cortical instability from prolonged metabolic strain. Either explanation points to the same conclusion. The brain requires sleep to maintain a coherent model of reality. Memory collapses next. New information barely sticks. Older memories surface unpredictably. Time becomes disorganized again, but now without the protective softness of sleep. Minutes stretch painfully. Joke number two. This is the opposite of the timeless night. You feel every second. And none of them are friendly. Physiologically, the body joins the rebellion. Stress hormones rise, immune function dips, inflammatory markers increase. The brain is not isolated from this chaos. It's immersed in it. Prolonged sleep deprivation has been linked to increased risk-taking, impaired moral judgment, and emotional blunting. You don't just feel worse, you become less you. In extreme cases, documented during military training, medical residencies, and rare neurological conditions, people experience full psychotic-like episodes, delusions, severe hallucinations, disorganized thinking. These symptoms often resolve once sleep is restored, which tells scientists something crucial. The brain is not broken, it's exhausted. Joke number three, whispered with care. Your brain can fake a lot of things, but sanity is not one of them. And there's a haunting historical footnote here. In the 1960s, a teenager stayed awake for over 11 days in a supervised experiment. He experienced mood swings, hallucinations, and cognitive collapse, but eventually recovered with sleep. The study is rarely repeated now, not because the results were unclear, but because they were too clear. Sleep deprivation dismantles the mind methodically. Scientists worry about this not just in extreme experiments, but in everyday life. Chronic partial deprivation, sleeping 5 hours instead of 8, night after night, doesn't cause dramatic hallucinations. It causes something quieter: erosion, slower thinking, emotional fragility, reduced empathy, a gradual dimming that people often accept as normal adulthood. And yet the brain keeps trying. It reaches for micro-rest. It steals moments. It begs, art in subtle ways, for darkness and time. Sleep pressure builds like gravity, impossible to cheat forever. As you drift now, safe, resting, letting the night hold you, you are doing the one thing that prevents this collapse. You are giving your brain what it demands, not for luxury, but for coherence. Ahead, the journey turns towards something even stranger. Moments when the brain wakes up inside its own dreams, and what that unsettles scientists about control, consciousness, and the illusion of choice. For now, you float gently, far from deprivation, letting the night do what deprivation never allows: restore order. At a certain depth of night, something rare and unsettling can happen. The dream doesn't fully hold you, and sleep doesn't fully erase you. Instead, a thin thread of awareness snaps on inside the dream itself. Jara, you realize you're dreaming, and for a moment, sometimes longer, you're awake in a world that isn't real. This is lucid dreaming, and scientists study it with a mix of excitement and suspicion. A mainstream scientific fact anchors it firmly in reality. Lucid dreaming has been verified in sleep laboratories. where dreamers signal awareness through prearranged eye movements during REM sleep. The body remains paralyzed. The brain remains in REM, but consciousness steps back onto the stage. From the inside, lucidity feels like a quiet click. The scene sharpens, fear loosens. You might test the rules, fly, change the setting, confront whatever was chasing you. Or you might simply observe, aware without interfering. The experience varies wildly, but the common thread is this: the boundary between sleeping and waking blurs. Here's a quirky tidbit that still surprises people. Lucid dreamers show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the very region usually dialed down during REM. This partial reactivation of logic and self-awareness is what makes lucidity possible. Your brain, briefly, is running two incompatible modes at once. Historians still argue whether lucid dreaming is a learned skill, a natural variation, or a sign of lighter, more fragmented sleep. Some evidence suggests frequent lucid dreamers hover closer to wakefulness during REM, raising questions about trade-offs. Is lucidity empowering, or is it sleep with one eye open? You feel this tension in the dream itself. Total control is rare. The environment resists. The moment you push too hard, the dream may collapse, snapping you awake. It's like trying to steer a river with your hands. And the dream tolerates awareness, but not domination. Joke number 1 drifts in gently. Your brain allows comments from the audience, but it does not grant directing privileges. Lucid dreaming fascinates researchers because it challenges clean definitions of consciousness. You are conscious but not awake, asleep but self-aware. The state suggests that consciousness is not an on/off switch, but a dimmer, capable of partial activation under the right conditions. There's also clinical interest. Lucidity has been explored as a tool for reducing nightmares, particularly in PTSD. By recognizing the dream as a dream, some people can reduce fear or change outcomes. This has shown promise, but it's not a universal solution. For some, lucidity disrupts sleep further, turning the night into a performance rather than a refuge. Joke number 2, not everyone wants their brain turning sleep into an interactive experience. The scholarly debate here runs deep. Historians still argue whether lucid dreaming represents a higher form of dream consciousness or a compromised one, REM sleep that never fully commits. Does lucidity enhance emotional processing or interrupt it? Does control undermine the brain's natural work or offer a safer way to process threat? Your brain's chemistry during lucidity is part of the mystery. Neurotransmitters that usually stay low during REM, like norepinephrine, may tick upwards slightly. Enough to support awareness, not enough to trigger waking. It's a biochemical balancing act, and not one the brain sustains easily. This is why lucid dreams are often brief. The system is unstable. Inawareness tends to either fade back into ordinary dreaming or surge forward into wakefulness. The brain seems to prefer clarity at the extremes. In-between states make it nervous. Ancient traditions describe similar experiences in different language. Dream yoga, astral awareness, waking the mind while the body sleeps. While modern neuroscience avoids metaphysical conclusions, it does acknowledge the shared observation. Humans have long noticed that the sleeping mind can sometimes turn back on itself. Joke number 3, softly amused. Your ancestors called it spiritual. Your brain calls it an edge case. Lucid dreaming also reveals something uncomfortable about control. Even when you know you're dreaming, emotions can still hijack the narrative. Fear can return. Scenes can shift without consent. And the sense of authorship is partial at best. This challenges the comforting idea that awareness equals mastery. Scientists worry, not in a dramatic way, but a careful one, about practices that aggressively chase lucidity. Techniques that fragment sleep or encourage repeated awakenings can undermine sleep quality overall. The brain may learn awareness at the cost of rest, and rest as you've felt all night is not optional. Yet occasional lucidity appears benign for many people. A curiosity, a window, a reminder that consciousness is more flexible than we assume. It shows that the sleeping brain is not a passive lump. It's dynamic, capable of surprising configurations when conditions align. You drift now in a dream that may or may not notice you back. Awareness flickers. Perhaps you sense the dream without naming it. Perhaps you remain fully inside it, no observer at all. Either way, the night doesn't demand control, it asks for surrender. Lucidity fades as easily as it arrived. The prefrontal spark dims. The dream resumes its authority. Logic dissolves again, and the brain, relieved, returns to the work it prefers to do without supervision. As the night moves on, these moments become rarer. Sleep deepens or cycles forward. The modern intrusions quiet. The ancient rhythms reassert themselves. Ahead, the focus widens once more, toward the unanswered questions that keep scientists awake at night, staring at brain scans and wondering why sleep exists at all. For now, you let go of control again, drifting back into a dream that doesn't need you to understand it to keep going. As the night stretches toward its later hours, the mysteries don't thin, they deepen. After all the stages, all the systems, all the beautifully choreographed processes you've drifted through, one question still refuses to settle. Why does any of this exist at all? This is where scientists slow down, lower their voices, and admit how much remains unanswered. Sleep is universal among complex animals, mammals, birds. Even creatures that can't fully shut down still enter sleep-like states. A mainstream biological fact grounds the puzzle. Evolution has preserved sleep for hundreds of millions of years, despite the obvious risk it introduces. A sleeping animal is vulnerable, immobile, unaware, and yet sleep persists. That alone tells scientists it must be doing something essential. You feel this essential quality as inevitability. No matter how much you resist, sleep arrives. A pressure builds in the brain through molecules like adenosine, accumulating during wakefulness until rest becomes unavoidable. Caffeine can block the signal temporarily, but it can't erase the need. Eventually, the debt is collected. Here's a quirky tidbit that continues to haunt sleep researchers. Fruit flies deprived of sleep die sooner than flies allowed to rest, even when food and safety are identical. They don't die immediately. They unravel slowly. The cause of death is unclear. No single organ fails dramatically. Life simply can't continue without sleep. Historians still argue whether sleep's primary function is neural repair, metabolic regulation, memory consolidation, emotional processing, or immune support. Each theory has evidence. None fully explains why sleep deprivation affects nearly every system at once. It's as if sleep isn't responsible for one job, but for maintaining the conditions that make all jobs possible. You drift through this uncertainty without concern. The brain doesn't need answers to keep working. It just needs permission to do so. While scientists debate function, your neurons synchronize, disconnect, reconnect, and recalibrate with quiet confidence. Joke number one slips in thoughtfully. Your brain doesn't know why sleep works either. It just knows not to skip it. One hypothesis gaining traction suggests that sleep allows the brain to reset its synaptic connections, strengthening some, weakening others, to prevent overload. During waking life, connections multiply. Learning adds weight. Sleep may be the only time the brain can rebalance without incoming noise. Without this reset, networks become inefficient, saturated, and brittle. Another theory frames sleep as a state for prediction maintenance. During the day, your brain constantly models the world, updating expectations. At night, it may review those models, trimming errors and reinforcing accuracy. Dreams in this view are simulations, low-risk environments to test assumptions. This would explain their bizarre flexibility. Reality rules don't apply because they're not needed. Historians still argue whether dreams themselves are the point or just the side effect of deeper recalibration. Are dreams meaningful tools or just sparks from neural housekeeping? The brain characteristically offers no commentary. Joke number two. Your brain runs overnight updates and refuses to release the patch notes. What unsettles scientists most is how many disorders intersect with sleep. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, now depression, anxiety, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome. Sleep disruption doesn't just accompany these conditions, it often precedes them. This suggests sleep may be foundational, not auxiliary. Damaged sleep and other systems wobble, and yet sleep remains fragile, easily delayed, easily fragmented, treated as expendable. This contradiction, essential yet neglected, is at the heart of modern concern. The brain demands sleep, but culture bargains it away. You float through this contradiction gently. None of it presses on you now. The debates, the unanswered questions, the theories stacked like books unread. Your brain doesn't require certainty. It requires cycles, darkness, time. Joke number 3 drifts by, barely audible. Your brain solves survival without understanding itself. Ambitious, really. As the night nears its end, NREM periods lengthen. Dreams become richer again, then thinner. The systems you've traveled through begin preparing for the return. Hormones shift. Temperature rises slightly. The brain, without waking you, is already planning morning. Scientists watch these final hours closely because this is when modern schedules do the most damage. Alarms cut REM short. Light floods in early. Sleep is yanked away just as integration peaks. The brain wakes incomplete. But tonight, you're still here. Still drifting. Still whole. Ahead lies the final stretch, the moment where vigilance slowly returns, where the brain decides it's safe enough to let go of the night entirely, where sleep releases you, not abruptly, but with care. For now, you remain suspended in the question itself, held by a brain that doesn't need answers to keep you alive, learning, way and feeling human. The night is thinning now, even if you don't sense it yet. Somewhere beneath the layers of sleep, your brain is beginning to turn outward again, stretching toward morning. This is the hour scientists find most revealing, not because sleep is at its strongest, but because it's loosening its grip. What happens here exposes just how deliberate the entire night has been. Your brain does not wake you abruptly unless forced. Left alone, it orchestrates a gradual return. Hormones shift first. Cortisol, often misunderstood as purely a stress chemical, begins to rise naturally in the early morning hours. This is a mainstream biological fact. Cortisol helps mobilize energy and prepare the brain for alertness. In healthy sleep, it rises gently, like light through a curtain, not like an alarm. You feel this as lightness. So sleep becomes more dream-filled, more easily interrupted. REM periods lengthen, threading vivid imagery right up to the edge of waking. This timing is not accidental. REM-heavy late sleep appears especially important for emotional integration and mood regulation. Scientists worry because this is the exact portion most often sacrificed to early alarms and late nights. Here's a quirky tidbit. People awakened from REM sleep are more likely to remember dreams, while those awakened from deep sleep often report nothing at all. It's not that dreams stop earlier in the night, it's that timing determines what makes it across the border. Your brain chooses what to let you keep. As vigilance returns, the thalamic gates begin to reopen. Sensory information slips back in. The hum of the room, the weight of the blanket, the position of your body. This re-entry is usually seamless. You don't feel systems switching on, you just find yourself back. Historians still argue whether waking consciousness is a distinct state or simply sleep with the lights turned up. The boundaries blur here. For a few moments you may feel suspended, neither fully asleep nor fully awake. Thoughts float. Identity snaps back into place slowly. This is the brain reassembling the self. Joke number 1 drifts in kindly. Your brain reboots in the morning because it absolutely does not trust a fast startup. Memory retrieval resumes cautiously. The brain checks which fragments survive the night. A dream image, a feeling. Most of the night remains inaccessible, not because it lacked activity, but because it lacked narrative hooks. This selective amnesia is protective. If you remembered every internal event, a waking life would drown in noise. Emotionally, the recalibrated systems begin to show their work. Problems may feel smaller, reactions less sharp, or if sleep was cut short, everything may feel slightly off, as if the emotional volume knob never quite landed where it should. Scientists track this closely because morning mood is one of the best indicators of sleep quality, not duration. Joke number 2. Your morning mood is your brain's performance review of the night. Physiologically, body temperature rises, blood pressure increases, muscles regain tone, REM paralysis disengages completely. The brain restores full communication between intention and action. You can move again without thinking about moving, a small miracle repeated daily without applause. Across cultures, waking has been ritualized for a reason. Morning prayers. was stretches, quiet moments. These weren't just spiritual habits. They were neurological accommodations. The brain benefits from gentle transitions. Abrupt waking, especially with loud alarms, can trigger a stress response, spiking heart rate and blood pressure. Scientists worry because modern waking is often violent to a system that prefers gradients. Historians still argue whether humans evolved to wake naturally with light or whether social demands always forced abrupt awakenings. What's clear is that the brain expects dawn, not sirens. Joke number 3, softly amused. Your brain would like to wake up organically, but capitalism had other plans. As consciousness firms up, the night's work recedes into invisibility. The cleanup, the sorting, the tuning. None of it announces itself. When you're simply left with the result, a brain that feels clearer, steadier, more capable, or if sleep was compromised, one that feels slightly misaligned. This is where scientists find their quiet alarm. When sleep is consistently shortened, the brain wakes unfinished. Emotional integration incomplete, memory consolidation partial, cleanup deferred. The effects aren't always dramatic. They're cumulative. A little less patience, a little more reactivity, a sense that life is heavier than it should be. And yet the brain remains astonishingly forgiving. One good night can repair more than you expect. Systems rebound, balance returns. This resilience is why sleep debt can feel invisible, until it's not. You begin to gather yourself now. Identity settles back into place. Name, role, plans. The self reconstitutes from memory and habit. Sleep releases you carefully, like hands letting go only once you're steady. Scientists still argue whether waking consciousness is the brain's default or just another temporary state. After all, you spend a third of your life asleep. Perhaps waking is the interruption. As morning approaches, the last dream threads dissolve. The timelessness gives way to sequence. Today appears. Yesterday slots into memory. The night closes itself without ceremony. And yet it leaves fingerprints everywhere. On how you feel, how you react, how you think. You carry the night forward whether you remember it or not. Ahead lies the final release. The quiet acceptance that sleep is not something you do, but something that happens to you when you allow it. A letting go, night after night, that keeps you intact. For now, you hover at the edge of waking. I balance between worlds, your brain completing its final checks before handing you back to the day. You are almost back now, but not fully. This final stretch of the night is not about effort or process, it's about release. After all the cycles, the cleaning, the tuning, the dreaming, your brain reaches the quiet conclusion it's been moving toward all along. Letting go. Sleep is not something you actively do. You don't push it. You don't hold it together. You allow it. And in that allowance, your brain performs its most essential act. Temporary disappearance. Vigilance dissolves. Control loosens. The self steps aside so the system can reset. A mainstream neuroscientific fact settles gently here. The brain regions most associated with self-referential thinking, the default mode network, reduce their coordinated activity during deep sleep. The voice that narrates, judges, and plans goes quiet. This is not emptiness, it's relief. You feel this as rest that goes deeper than muscles or thoughts. It's the rest of not having to be anyone for a while. Here's a quirky tidbit to tuck into the dark. People under anesthesia and people in deep non-REM sleep show surprisingly similar patterns of reduced cortical integration. Different states, different mechanisms, but the same result. The brain steps out of its usual loops. Historians still argue whether this temporary dissolution of the self is essential to mental health or simply a side effect of neural maintenance. Either way, when waking up whole seems to depend on vanishing first. You are no longer monitoring your breath. You are no longer tracking time. Even dreams thin out now, giving way to long, quiet stretches where nothing announces itself at all. This is not lost time. This is time doing its job without needing witnesses. Joke number 1, whispered with a smile. Your brain disappears every night and trusts it will be there in the morning. Bold, honestly. The fear scientists carry is not about sleep itself. It's about what happens when people stop trusting this disappearance, when nights become battlegrounds, when control is clutched instead of released. The brain does not respond well to being supervised while it sleeps. Historians still argue whether early humans feared sleep or revered it more. There's evidence for both. Sleep was dangerous, but also sacred. You were vulnerable, but protected by ritual, firelight, community. Modern life removed the ritual and kept the danger. The brain notices. As the final cycles complete, systems synchronize one last time. Emotional tone settles. Memory traces stabilize. Waste clears as much as it can. Nothing is perfect, but it's enough. The brain doesn't need perfection, it needs completion. Joke number 2 floats by lazily. Your brain calls this good enough and goes offline. This is why sleep deprivation is so destabilizing. It's not just about fatigue, it's about never fully letting go, never allowing the self to dissolve and reform. Consciousness without interruption becomes rigid, brittle. Sleep keeps it flexible. You feel this flexibility as readiness. Even before waking, the brain is already preparing you to re-enter the world with a slightly softened edge. Problems will return, but they won't arrive sharp. Emotions will come back online, but regulated. Identity will snap into place again, but refreshed. Historians still argue whether consciousness is the brain's primary state or just one mode among many. After all, you spend years of your life not conscious in the way you think of it. Perhaps the night is the rule and the day the exception. Joke number 3, barely there. Your brain spends more time asleep than awake and still runs the whole show. As the night finally releases you, it does so without ceremony. No applause, no memory, just a gentle handoff. You awake thinking the night vanished, unaware of how much happened in the dark on your behalf. And that's the quiet miracle scientists worry about losing. Not sleep itself, but trust in it. The willingness to surrender control night after night. The faith that your brain knows how to take care of you when you stop watching it. So as the darkness thins and the last threads of sleep loosen, you don't need to chase understanding. You don't need to remember the journey. Your brain has already carried you through. You let go, again and again. And tomorrow night, you'll do it all over. Without effort, without thought, just by allowing the night to take you.